Whakataka te au ki te uru, whakataka te au ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia maataratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te ata akura, e tio, e huka, e hauhu, tihei mauri ora. E mihi rā ki a koutou e manaaki nei I tēnei kaupapa o he waka e kenua. Nau mai, hara mai. Hara mai rā e te whānau, hara mai ki te wakarongo ki tēnei o ngā kaupapa rangahau. Nā tūtama wahine o Taranaki e hora hia mō tātou. Tēnei timihi ki ngā kairangahau katoa I roto I te rōpū he waka e kenua, e mihi ana hoki ki te tokorua ko tai mai I tēnei wahanga ki te kōrero-rero, ki te waka uti kōrero mō o rātou tirohanga mo te rangahau nei. Ko Taranaki te maunga, ko Aotearoa haupō me tokomaru ngā waka. He mokopuna tēnei o ngā iwi maha o Taranaki o Anui, ko Hinerangi Edwards tōku ingoa. Ko au tō koutou kai awhina I tēnei rā, nā runga I te kaupapa o e waka e kenua. We mihi to you and thank you for attending this webinar today or listening in on the pre-recorded kōrero you might be connecting to today. The kaupapa of this session is looking at the reflections from kaupapa Māori practitioners with regard to he waka e kenua. The Waka e Kenua project has been developed by Tūtama Wahine o Taranaki in partnership with Te Aratupu, Pūranga Kura, Te Ware Wānanga o Awanui-Arangi, Te Puna Oranga, Te Atawhai o Te Ao, Māori and Indigenous Analysis Limited, Kākariki Consulting, Te Whānau o Te Rau Aroa, Lalanga Training and Consultancy, with funding provided by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. It's my privilege as Director of Aotea to work alongside Tūtama Wahine, and we thank them for the opportunity to be part of this kaupapa. This session is being hosted in a webinar format, which means no one, including the panelists, can see you or hear you on this call. We encourage you to use the question and answer function, which is located in the center of your Zoom dashboard at the lower part of your screen. If you'd like to submit a question anonymously, you can by ticking the Send Anonymously button when submitting the question. You can also, if you'd like to share comments of encouragement, kei te pai hoki tērā, that enables our kai kōrero to know kei ko nā koutou. The session will run for 20 minutes with our first speaker, and then we will thank her and then introduce our second speaker for another 20 or so minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And then at the conclusion of that, we'll have half an hour of question and answers. We've also enabled the closed captioning for this webinar, which you can start by clicking the CC. And I think we've put a little message in the chat so that you can find, for those of our whānau who would like to use the closed caption tool that has the instructions there. This seminar series is being recorded and will be shared with all of those who have registered via email. It'll also be available for your viewing and for your learning afterwards. There will be a short survey which will pop up on your screen after the session. Would really appreciate it if you could provide feedback on this webinar experience. For those of you who are live with us today, if you could spare the 5 minutes to complete the survey. If you're watching the recording afterwards, you won't be able to provide feedback via a survey, but I'm sure if you contacted via email Tūtama Wahine o Taranaki, they would love to hear your feedback on this rangahau and this resource. lastly, the video recordings from the last 2 weeks are now available live on the Tūtama Wahine website. Before we start our kōrero, we'd firstly like to acknowledge that there are many of you who are survivors, fighters, resistors, liberators, healers, practitioners, and whānau members. So we understand that whānau, we are at different stages of our journeys, of our recovery, of our healing and our development. Some of the information that we'll be sharing throughout this session may surface some responses or memories from you, which is normal. And if you feel you need to pause, then please do so and take a moment. Do whatever you need to do for your own self-care. The recording for the session will be made available for your viewing later, so you won't miss out. If you need to kōrero with someone about your own experiences, the following are some good starting points. The places that are mentioned on your screen: Family Violence Info Line, www.ruok.org.nz, Māori Oho, a kaupapa Māori website for sexual violence resources, and also in your own networks of our Māori health providers, many of whom have been contributing to the rangahau itself, and also as attendees and participants in this webinar series. Now, onto our incredible kai kōrero mō tēnei wahanga o te rā. E mihi ana ki tēnei o tātou mā reikura. He uri tēnei o Ngāti Mutunga o Ngāti Kahungunu o te Wairoa. Ngaropi is the foundation member, director and senior domestic violence program facilitator and educator of Tūtama Wahine o Taranaki. Ngaropi has worked in the social services area in a variety of environments for the last 30 years. She's an active iwi member who has worked in the health and social justice sector for over 40 years. And I don't know how it can be 40 years, Ngaropi, because, you know, it doesn't feel that long ago that I was a 20-year-old taking the phone calls at Women's Refuge with your guidance and your supervision. And it's 28 years ago. But I runga I te ngākau aroha, te ngākau maaki, e mihi ana ki a koe, e te rangatira mō o mahi huhua, ko oti a koutou ko tō whānau o ta māhine hoki, mō Tūtama Wahine o Taranaki. It's such a pleasure and an honour to be with you today. And how are you? And how are you feeling today about the 8 sessions that we've had already in this He Waka Eke Noa series?
Ora, thank you, Hinerangi. Well, I'm fine, but I feel a little nervous. Just like to get into it. Yeah, it's been a while ago. Yeah, anyway.
Kei te pai, kei te pai.
I'm nervous.
Ai, o ka tuku te rākau ki a koe. Whai muri I o kōrero ka rongo tātou I a Billie-Jean Cassidy, and then we'll come together for our question and answer time. So ka tuku te rākau ki a koe, tēnā no koe.
Kia ora Hinerangi. And I would like to thank you and mihi to you, Hinerangi, and certainly for the reminder to everybody about self-care. This is not a therapy session. You know, the content may re-stimulate unwanted feelings for some viewers, so I thank you for that earlier alert. I'd also like to acknowledge Aotea for their IT support, but firstly, but mostly I really want to mihi to the He Waka Eke Noa team and all ngā, you know, ngā kai kōrero I mua I ahau, and all our kai kōrero who contributed to this project. But to our team members, who I consider to be warriors in the true sense of the word, you know, I think of them as wahine tiaki tangata, tāne tiaki tangata, because of the way they consistently spread themselves across kaupapa Māori projects, initiatives, rangahau, and practice to ensure that this space is held and secured for future generations. And I want to mihi to our brave whānau and our kaimahi practitioners who, I'm sure, celebrate daily our survival and resistance to domination and oppression. And I really want to give a big fat mihi to my co-presenter, Billie-Jean Cassidy. So when I think about some of the other things, I want to mihi to the inner warrior, the inner rangatira, who reside within all tangata Māori. That inner warrior who greets each day with interest and anticipation of change, and hopefully with a sense of joy about things to come. So by acknowledging our inner rangatira, this brings rangatiratanga into the frame, just as all previous kai kōrero have done, and just as our participant kai kōrero in the project did. Now, in doing this, I want to briefly touch on how rangatiratanga informs or could inform practice. And I know that others have spoken about these things, but I want to talk about how it informs, it could inform our practice. So there are two threads I want to try and interweave this afternoon, especially to acknowledge whānau members who shared kōrero that helps give insight into how to practice with our people. And the first thread is political. Everything is political. Being born Māori is political. And it's political because we're not meant to be here. We're in the way. We are in the way on our own homelands. Now, we don't have to look back very far to remember statements like, I consider it my scientific duty to lie in wait to shoot Maoris. That's Atkinson, that's here in Taranaki. Soothing the pillow of the dying race, or they won't be subjugated. They will have to be assimilated. Those are statements from out of Hansard Records. And those are statements without adding any comments about the last election or any other 3-year political football event that takes place. So some things, not a lot has changed. But it continues today, only it's a slow boil. It's like the frog in warm water. It doesn't realise the danger until it's too late. And the He Waka Eke Noa report speaks about the concept of slow violence as a way of understanding long-term cumulative ways in which violence occurs, out of sight, slowly, incrementally, as the top quote is laid out. And Linda spoke about this, as did all other kai kōrero that were interviewed. They touched on this as well, on political and respect to our sovereignty, our chieftainship, our leadership, our self-determination, self-management over our lives. And that's what the bottom quote is talking about. And the second thread is about us as individuals and how we practice and apply leadership. Linda showed these slides last week as well. So from my perspective, Kaimahi Māori, our expression of rangatiratanga in our life and practice is what connects kaupapa Māori principles on an individual and political level. It's the glue that holds things together. They are our universal reference points. They are our reference points, not governments, they are ours. And they help establish our legitimacy to work with our own people. And I will guarantee this to you, that you can plot what you are doing with whānau using these wheels. Kei te tika, kei te here. If it's a here, if it comes not in there, kei te here. We have to think about what we're doing. kei te tika, kei te he. You just need to look at the wheel to think about what you are doing, what we are doing, what is happening with the whānau. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've done it. You have it. So kai kōrero, we're cognizant of asserting our rangatiratanga on both levels, individual and political. They were also fully conversant with how the Crown continued to be in breach of the treaty, thus reinforcing current systemic failings for Māori. And you can see from the top quote, the 2022 7th Family Violence Death Report agrees. The 2029 and 2021 Waitangi Tribunal inquiries into the health and care and protection sectors are stating the failings are grounded in treaty breaches and the current system, basically they're saying it's broken. It's gone too far. We're talking about a computer, we'd be saying it's corrupted. Need to get rid of it, get a new one, change it. But they're saying it's gone too far to be efficient or to be able to make any, or to be able to affect any meaningful change. And whānau agreed. Not only are kai kōrero and whānau pointing the same thing out, but the state crown accountability structures are on the same page. You know, they both can't be wrong. And here is what we've done, another wheel. We don't have to invent the wheels, they're here, is a partnership wheel. Now, kai kōrero understood and emphasised that we need to ensure our rangatiratanga is utilised as a legitimate healing avenue that is fully resourced and accessible. And if you just have a look, if you can see, if you have a look, I'll just quickly at economic partnership, it talks about decisions, about resources are made together. Ensure both cultures benefit from local, national and international opportunities. Communicate openly and truthfully. And the other one I would just have a quick look at is shared responsibility. This is mutual agreements reached about issues that affect both cultures. Create a system whereby both cultures are involved in decision making, accepting responsibility for carrying out agreed obligations. Communicate openly and truthfully. Time doesn't allow us to go into that further, but it's worth thinking about in respect to what people are saying. So when they talked about fully resourced and accessible, and when they talk about accessible, our whānau, they're talking about Māori ki te Māori, wairua ki te wairua, mana ki te mana. That it is Māori directed, that it is Māori owned, and that it is Māori driven. And I say, it's like a car. We have the car keys. And we have the car keys because we own the car. So when we own the car, we drive it. And when we drive it, we make the decisions to drive where we want to go. And we will talk about the universal road rules a little later. You all know what they are. They're called tikanga, and they are there to keep us all safe. They're not there to hinder us. So we drive the car because it is our trauma. It is our responsibility, which gives us the right to address it. And we want to address it ourselves. We do know what to do, and we know we can do it. So kai kōrero validated the treaty as the framework for governance and decision-making and social inclusion for all citizens in Aotearoa. And alongside this, 81% of whānau who participated in the He Waka Eke Noa survey identified strategies on how they maintain violence-free homes and lives. And I really want to give a big fat mihi here to Shirley. I mean, this is a brilliant survey, and she's just such a top-notch analyst. It was so good to work with her. So thank you for the earlier kōrero, Shirley. So she talked about 81% set clear boundaries. This is some of the things they said. Set clear boundaries, limiting alcohol and drugs, embracing a tikanga-based life. They improve communication and connections. They actively contribute and they actively cultivate pride and self-worth. They value whānau and themselves. They explored and nurtured aspects of wairua, creating a firmer cultural, spiritual base. They talked about empowerment, advocacy for self and whānau, accessing support, and a variety of support, educating whānau about advocacy, about how to get support, the right type of support, about systems and processes, about how those processes work, how those systems work. They were also taught about what not to do and where not to go. They also spoke about gainful employment and education, creating financial security, getting a deeper understanding and analysis of colonisation and institutional racism, engaging in te ao Māori. These all require engagement and participation in whānau, in hapu and in community life. So whānau endorsed the treaty as a framework, and the survey shows how whānau are enacting it on the ground in the community, how to get back in charge. But I would say, make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. The structure and process of colonisation and violence in the home are the same. Okay, so let's be clear. Now, I'm not talking about the one-off apparition. International research shows that there are 48 incidences of violence before police are first called to the home. 48. How many treaty breaches have there been? Treaty breaches, which the Family Violence Death Review Committee's 7th report identifies as a causal factor. So there is an agenda in both cases, in colonisation and in violence in the home. There is an agenda, and the top 3 items are domination, education, and suppression, acquiescence. So family violence is power over, there's domination, extraction, take what you want, whenever you want, threats and intimidation. The violence is and can be systemic, unpredictable, it's hidden, it's silenced. There's blaming and denial. The violence is physical, sexual, psychological. It can be racialised, and it can be spiritual. And there are probably several other things that can go there as well. Now, when you think about this is terrorist behaviour in the home, which has its origins in the state processes, the state structures, practices, and ongoing behaviour, which we then have to put up with, ongoing. When I say ongoing behaviour, every 3 years, we endure it. So our homes are places that should be sanctuaries of safety, nurturing, care, fun and joyful whānau. So violence has been described as the imposter tikanga. Okay, imposter tikanga. But there's nothing tika or tikanga about whānau violence. The real imposters are the denial and excuses given to maintain power and control, and the imposition of the nuclear family on Māori and other Indigenous peoples. They are the real imposters. Because we have been labelled as the problem, and the spaces we occupy are increasingly identified as dangerous, there is a need to reframe and rebalance. So these days I'm talking less about violence within whānau Māori and more about colonial violence, imported violence being acted out in whānau Māori homes, causing terror and intergenerational trauma. So this is why we mihi to the inner warrior, the inner rangatira, to remind us that real warriors, real rangatira, protect, nurture, teach, provide, lead as productive members of the whānau and community. They don't intentionally hurt whānau or damage whakapapa. So I think that our practice approach was validated by He Waka Eke Noa Kai Kōrero, because an important aspect of kaimahi Māori work is to politicise, is to conscientise whānau. Now, if whānau only have historical trauma and ongoing intergenerational trauma as their whānau backstory and their historical narrative, then whānau kaimahi, whānau workers, have not just a responsibility, but a right to educate whānau about how the whānau finds itself in the situation it is in. The system is bigger than them, and it needs to be put into proportion for them, into perspective for them. Sometimes they have no context. It has to be put into context. Now, if this is a situation, then that is what kaimahi have to do as well as address immediate needs, safety, food and shelter, all those sorts of things. And I would go so far as to say, actually I do say it, that if we fail as kaimahi Māori to help conscientise, to start the decolonising process, then we are derelict in our duty of care. And not just to whānau or to defenceless wahine and mokopuna, but to ours and to their tupuna. You know, and quite frankly, our tupuna deserve better, and so do we. So we do have to address safety and immediate needs, but the practice approach is to decolonise as well. And often that begins in our own backyard, in our own workforce. So decolonising by encouraging a return to tikanga, which validates our culture and our intellectual traditions. We know that disrespect is the basis of all abuses, all the isms, you know, the racism, the sexism. So what we know from that, when we think about that, that tells us that we come from a respectful tradition. Our tupuna didn't do that stuff. They didn't get into sexist behaviour. Good luck if they tried. They didn't do that. Homophobic behaviour. He tangata. We are human beings. He tangata. They're a human being. Our tupuna didn't do that stuff. So we come from a respectful tradition. And that respectful traditions were enshrined in tikanga. And we know that as well. We know that because tikanga kept whānau, it kept te pāhara keke safe for centuries. And we travelled a long way. You know, it kept us safe. Respectful relationships, ata. If you think back to the kaupapa Māori wheel, ata, the principle of growing respectful relationships. So, the second report on whānau violence, family violence, gives 3 steps. They've been touched on in other kōrero. So dispel the illusion that whānau violence and Māori whānau violence is normal, because it is not. It is not. Nor was it ever normal. Remove the opportunity for violence to happen. You know, before Pākehā came, violence was the last response. The last response. It wasn't the first response. So dispel the illusion, remove the opportunity, and transformative practice. The application of tikanga, a reorientation back to Te Ao Māori values, knowledge, rituals, ceremony, traditions. So it's not a quick fix. You have to be prepared for the long haul, and you need the heart for the job. Don't waste your passion on this. You need the heart for the job. The pathway of prevention and intervention has to include the whānau's own backstory and their recovery story. So the approach is to promote application of traditional practices in our homes to address colonial violence and neglect. We to encourage reorientation back to tupuna te ao Māori values, Māori law and ways of doing and being, encourage them back into our kāinga, into our whare, into our papa kāinga, because tikanga is primary prevention. It has to start somewhere. Whānau are the solution. You heard, you saw those graph this morning. Where do Māori go? What was at the top of the list? Was whānau. Tikanga is primary prevention, and it's to start in the home. Whānau are the solution. But as kaimahi, we have to believe it. We have to believe that they're the solution. And we have to actively promote that whānau are the solution. We have to believe in our practice, and we have to have faith in ourselves and in our culture. And we have to think about what it means. Oh, we have to have the belief and the hope. Now, what would it mean? Just I want you to think about this. What would it mean if we were to pōwhiri, to formally welcome Māori law back into our whare, back into our homes? The pōwhiri is an invitation to engage. So it's an invitation. So invitation brings a different perspective with it. It brings a different presence into a space. So no one is being compelled or forced to engage. Okay? There's a different dynamic around choice that is operating. So think about it. And what would it mean as kaimahi Māori if we were to sharpen our political pencils? And I'm sure there's lots of things we could say, but I think we would collectively be more vocal about seeing our people as assets to community, including those who are considered problematic. We would see them as assets, untapped potential, possibilities that have values, skills, knowledge and resources, not as statistics or problems to be fixed or solved or sent away or done away with. Tikanga is primary prevention. Tikanga is our strength-based practice. It is the most promising approach to address what we need to repair and reclaim. And we do this by centering the practice and application of tikanga and back into a daily way of life, which is collective and community focused. This is to help create, promote and support prevention and intervention solutions. You know, it's actually a big ask of whānau to reintroduce concepts and practice that they may not be familiar with, they may not have grown up with, but they are part of our culture and identify who we are as a people. And it's a hopeful and promising approach to apply. So whānau are the solution, and Wairua Māori plays a part. But we know that Wairua pays little attention to what you or I believe or what you or I want. It's a force of nature, and we just need to get on with it. But how we harness it, how we harness the Wairua is within cultural practices. And that is the difference between organising a problem and healing a problem. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Back to you, Hinerangi.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koe Ngaropi. We're in the background saying, keep going Ngaropi, keep going. Just hikaka katoa, te wakarongo ki ena o ngā kōrero, and I'm sure that Billie-Jean Cassidy is going to bring it. Oh, Billie-Jean, e mihi ana ki a koe. E te tuakana, e mihi ana ki a koutou katoa me o koutou maia tō koutou kaha me te rangahau ko papū ake I roto I a koutou. e mihi ana ki o whakapapa. I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to hand it to you to share with the kai kōrero a bit about yourself and about your participation and what matters most to you from this rangahau. Kei a koe te wā, tēnā koe.
Tēnei te mihi kia koutou. He uri tēnei no ngā puhi nai takoto nā te kahunganu hoki. Engari e noho ana hau ki o tautahi. Ko Billie-Jean Cassidy tōku ingoa, ko te kai whakahaere hau o Te Puna Oranga here in Christchurch. Kei te mihi, kia ora, first of all, kia ora hene rangi, rawa ko Sophie mo tō tautoko kia hau. He mihi kia koe Ngaropi me te whanau o Tū Tamawahine. Mo tō kōrero Ngaropi, you make me want to stand up and yeah, do my job well. Ki ngā kairangahau o He Wake Kenoa, thank you for having Te Puna Oranga on board. Ki ngā kaimahi katoa, who do the hard yards in this mahi daily, you know, true warriors in this mahi, mahi taumaha. And so all the whānau who shared their kōrero and fed into the research. He mihi. Kia ora. So, next slide, please, Sophie. So, we've heard about the different forms of violence that have affected whānau Māori for hundreds of years. Colonisation has affected us all, and the kōrero research and surveys prove that these things continue to affect whānau today. Colonisation is not the predominant reason why whānau choose to use services like ours or Tū Tamawahine. They're coming to our services due to how violence plays out in their lives currently. Through physical violence, through sexual violence, or other forms of violence, including state violence and trauma. What is interesting but not surprising is that some whānau have not considered the generational impacts of colonisation, which still affects their lives today. Whānau need to know that they're not to blame for the devastating things that have happened to Māori for centuries. Acknowledgement of colonisation and state violence and their impacts on whānau is often a relief and helpful for whānau who are working towards their own healing. And I just want to say at this point, and I know Hinerangi pointed it out before, is that, you know, during the course of my kōrero, there may be some things that are said that are triggering, so I just want to let you know that. Some of my kōrero might get a bit raw and real, so please be aware. Today we still see whānau who are impacted on a daily basis by state violence. It is those whānau who are on the verge of having children uplifted by oranga tamariki and who have an FGC due next week, whereas if they'd been sent to us when issues were first raised, the trauma may have been significantly reduced and there may have been no need for an FGC. It's those kaumata and kuia who have taken responsibility for their mokopuna because the parents have succumbed to meth addiction. And now Nani and Kuro are looking after the mokopuna and doing so without any financial support. And it's those whānau who are being beaten daily while still tasked with raising children. Oranga tamariki say, you know, she's putting the children at risk, and kainga ora are saying they are no longer suitable tenants. The list goes on, and those are some of the violence that still continues within the state services. Next slide, please. So here at Te Puna Oranga, what does being a kaupapa Māori agency mean to us? So Te Puna Oranga is a kaupapa Māori social service established in Christchurch in 1984. Māori community workers at the time felt there needed to be a kaupapa Māori agency in Christchurch to work specifically with the many whānau they found had been traumatised by mahi tūkino or sexual violence. And I've taken a quote directly from the He Waka General research. The urgent need for collective and community approaches to violence is a critical point that has been emphasised for many years by Māori across the country. That quote was relevant in 1984 when Te Puna Oranga was established, and it's still relevant now. Next slide, please. So what is tika and what does it mean in our practice? So kaupapa Māori to Te Puna Oranga means that we have an all Māori Board of Trustees. We employ kaimahi Māori. We have an overarching kahui kui where we seek our tikanga advice, and we are guided by our tikanga principles, which is tino rangatiratanga, potahitanga, manamutu hake, tika and pono, and aroha ki te tangata. It also means that we incorporate tikanga into our practice. Incorporating tikanga into our practice means that we do what is tika and what is correct for our people. Just briefly or in short, the services that we offer at Te Puna include counselling, including working with whānau abused in state care, social work advocacy and education, youth mentoring, including education and youth justice, family violence services, taumātua services, mai oha wairua services, and a sexual violence crisis response. Doing what is tika and what is correct for our whānau often means advocating for whānau with the state services. More often than not, it means we have to challenge the services. We have to disrupt what is the norm for the state services. Just because something is always done in a certain way or they've always done something the same way does not make it right or tika. And it does not mean it works for whānau. I know our kaimahi often find themselves in lonely situations where they might be the only Māori or the only person in the room fighting for the well-being and best outcomes for our whānau. Next slide, please. So what is tikanga in practice? What does that look like in our practice? So many whānau that we see at Te Puna Oranga are disconnected from their own whakapapa. And although we work with whānau from local iwi, other whānau are away from their own hapu and iwi, and in some cases, this has been for many years. As well as being disconnected from their iwi and their whakapapa, there is usually a disconnect from te reo, tikanga, and mātauranga, to name a few. Many whānau have no idea where to start, but there is definitely a longing to be reconnected. Regardless of how many whānau come to be at, or regardless of how whānau come to be at Te Puna Oranga, there's always the consideration of colonisation, systemic and state violence, dispossession, and the other intersectionalities before looking at their presenting problems. Our guiding tikanga principles, again, of tino rangatiratanga, kotahitanga, manamutu hake, tika and pono, and aroha ki te tangata, means that this is not only how we view and work with whānau, but it's always also how we view and work with each other. And Ngaropi touched on that before. As kaimahi, we've got to be the things that we're wanting to impart on whānau. if we want to share principles with whānau, then we as kaimahi must embody and role model these principles ourselves. We believe that all whānau can embody our guiding tikanga principles and that all whānau members are leaders in their own right. There are a number of different ways that we use tikanga in our mahi. Our principles are the overarching tikanga for us. However, simple tikanga use of, say, whanaungatanga and manaaki from first contact, whether it be in person, on the phone, or by email, is the point of difference between ourselves and non-Māori organisations that makes engagement with whānau for us more successful. Ongoing whakawhanaungatanga and manaaki are essential in establishing relationships with whānau, and they are also essential in building relationships with the state services, and that's to ensure successful outcomes for whānau. That doesn't mean that we're always nice and obliging, not at all. It means that we can stand staunch in our tikanga principles and convey concisely what the needs of whānau are in order to navigate their systems and gain the right outcomes. Next slide, please. All of the practices at Te Puna Oranga use tikanga in some form, and that's right from our administrators to my role as kai whakahaere. It's such an important daily practice, all forms of tikanga. But I just, as we go on, I just want to highlight some of the mahi that we do at Te Puna Oranga and how tikanga might be woven into that. Firstly, there's our programs, our education. First of all, I want to look at wahine whakaoho. It's a women's empowerment program. Most of the wahine have come to us following years of family violence. The program aims to empower these wahine, increase their self-esteem and mana motuhake, build their resilience and confidence. Manaaki is extended in a way by we put the wahine and her children up, and we provide childcare so that she can solely concentrate on the learnings of the program. A cooked lunch is provided for the wahine and the tamariki at the end of the program, and then they're dropped off home, and that just reduces the barriers and it enables them to attend. Each day the program starts with karakia and himene. For some, that might be the first time learning these things. Pepeha is introduced, and for some this is the first time they've learned about pepeha. But they're in a safe environment to be able to make mistakes and not feel whakama. The wahine learn pūrākau, for example, the story of Niwareka and Matora. Throughout the program, they will have learned about Te Tiriti o Waitangi and what that means to them today. There's a focus on Te Whare Tapawhā and the importance of wellness of all sides of the whare. Hauora is another important aspect of their learning, including, light exercise, breathing through hikitia te hā. They learn about te kaiao and spend much of their learning outside. Marakai, again, is important. Most of all, the wahine have a place that allows them to reconnect with themselves. They have the ability to build positive relationships with the other wahine and also with ourselves, the kaimahi. And it also allows them to be supported by kaimahi, to have more positive experiences when dealing with the state services. For those that are already confident in Te Ao Māori, being within a kaupapa Māori environment simply allows them to be themselves and it enables their participation. Next slide, please. So Hineti Tama is a mahi tūkino prevention and intervention program for kōtiro. Like the wahine, we still focus on karakia himene, pepeha, pūrākau, in particular the story of Hine Titama, te whare tapa whā, te tiriti o Waitangi Haura, all while learning prevention and tools for healing. Hine Titama is a wānanga, and recently we've incorporated matariki with the girls' learning and healing journeys. The aim of the program is to build confident young women who have the ability to form healthy relationships and who can stand confidently in their own mana motuhaki. We're also trying to provide our kōtiro with positive experiences as opposed to the years of trauma they may have already experienced. And you know, you know, the girls probably wouldn't normally have the opportunity to do these kind of wānanga and have these kind of trips. You know, again, there's a strong emphasis on incorporating tikanga into our practice. But if you look at the photos there in the slide, it was great to be able to have matariki alongside the girls' healing and learning journeys and incorporate it. And, you know, it was a really great thing to be able to take them to Takapo as well, and really learn about the stars and all those things as well. Kia ora. Next slide, please. So, in addition to Hine Titama, we've got another education program called Puawai, which is an online safety program. So, you know, our kids are born into, you know, online stuff these days. So it's a really huge feature of our kids' lives. But the beauty of this Puawai program is we've collaborated with our local kura, Te Pāo Rākai Hautu, whose own tikanga principles align closely with ours. In today's world, we know that our tamariki of all ages spend many hours online. It's a sad reality that our children are subjected to things like online porn because it's accessible. It also means that our children are at a greater risk of sexual abuse through online perpetrators. Things like revenge porn is on the rise, and girls are being asked for nudes is a real issue for our kids. Catfishing is also a real thing that happens in our local schools. The great thing is we're able to send our kaimahi into the school and deliver the program in te reo Māori. We're still able to use tikanga like we do in our other programs and have our children happily participate because they're familiar. It means that we get to participate in their growth and learning of our tamariki Māori and impart our mātauranga in order to keep our tamariki safe and grow safe young people and adults. Next slide, please. Yes. So probably one of the essential parts of our mahi where tikanga is extremely important is in advocacy. A large number of whānau dealing with the state services, you know, oranga tamariki, family court, district court, youth or rangatahi court, Department of Corrections, police, kainga ora, WHWENs, etc. Navigating these systems is frustrating and it can be traumatizing. But we need to be able to lead our whānau through these systems so that they can gain positive outcomes. I want to give you a bit of an example of what advocacy looks like in our organisation. So a young mum, Māori, tū tamariki, has a meth addiction and is experiencing physical violence. Oranga tamariki are called and both children are uplifted. They state that she must attend rehabilitation, and if she doesn't, she risks losing her children for good. One of her children is sent to the North Island, the other remains in Christchurch. She can visit the child, who remains only once a month. She has little money or support. She is coming down from a drug use, is coping with physical violence, and is distressed that her children are gone. Oranga tamariki walk away and leave her with her conditions. Luckily, I guess, she is picked up by a kaimahi from our family violence team. And it's at that time the whakawhanaungatanga begins, and we learn what is going on for this young mum. So initially we get her some kai. We listen. We listen, find out what's going on for her. We get her to engage in the wahine whakaoho program. We start liaising with the oranga tamariki social worker. We advise that any interaction with oranga tamariki in the future is to take place in our whare and under our tikanga. We also engage our local Māori drug rehabilitation program and start preparing her for this. She starts to see one of our counsellors, and as Tane starts to work with Tane from our family violence team. We give her kai and transport vouchers, which allows her to visit her Christchurch-based tamaiti. And her kai vouchers allows her to take kai to see her tamaiti, and have a wee treat for each other. She completes wahine whakaoho and over time has reduced her meth intake. We engage the medical practitioner, which helps her to enter into rehab. She completes rehab successfully. Oranga tamariki visits with her at our whare and attempts to lecture her about her past. She, the social worker, is respectfully reminded how far this wahine has come, her achievements, and how compliant she's been. She is upfront, our wahine, that she remains in a relationship with her tāne, but there have been no further incidences of violence or misuse. An FGC is held at our whare, and agreement is made for the tamariki to be returned. Oranga tamariki eventually closed the case. Te Puna Oranga continues to provide support. This whole scenario, this whole process probably happened over the course of a year. The whānau continued to grow. But without the use of tikanga, we probably wouldn't have got the ongoing engagement, and perhaps the whānau may not be in the shape that they're in now, but they're doing great. Next slide, please. So, lastly, in organisations like Te Puna Oranga, where the main focus of our mahi is mahi tūkino, sexual violence, tikanga plays a major role, especially in the well-being and healing of our whānau. Tikanga through whanaungatanga is what helps us to engage and build relationships. Tikanga through tika and pono builds trusting relationships. And tikanga through manaaki means we can look after the relationship and we're trusted to work and speak on behalf of. The list of tikanga goes on. But I just want to leave you with a couple of quotes from the research itself. It is highlighted that tikanga provides us the critical knowledge and ways of being to support us through all forms of violence at both individual and collective levels. In order to create enduring transformation, we must make collective changes that support each other, each member of the whānau. Sorry. In order to create enduring transformation, we must make collective changes that support each member of the whānau. And I leave you with this quote, also from the research. Violence is enabled in spaces where tikanga is not present, and therefore we must bring tikanga into all parts of our lives and our existence. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Tēnā no koe, o tino tēnā no kōrua. Thinking about the wahine that you shared the journey with Billie-Jean, was there, you know, a specific wahine that you were thinking about, and that was how the journey, or was that actually something that's very common in your mahi and that you see time and time again?
Both, Himerangi. It was someone specific that I was thinking about, but it is something that happens time and time again. And I think the number of FGCs that Kaimai have been involved in this year alone has been a lot. I think the thing that we can take from it, though, is, you know, in this year we have seen some positive outcomes, although it's not positive that the children have been uplifted. I'm glad that we're there working with whānau, because I have seen, you know, incidents where, and Ngaropi touched on it, where not enough has been done, or people aren't standing up enough for our whānau. So to see children returned this year has been a real highlight for me, and yeah, it's really great to see.
Tēnā koe. We have some pātai. I have other pātai in my head, but no, let's honour the pātai that have been shared by those who are listening in. Wairua is a force of nature. This is from Whare Kupinga Keith. How do we bring this and similar awareness to a collective front? Wairua is a force of nature. I'm not sure which one of you said that. It might have been you, Ngaropi.
Sorry, Hinerangi, what was the last part of that question?
Yeah, Wairua is a force of nature. It might have been something that you said this afternoon.
Yeah, it is.
Aye, so how do we bring this?
You said Wairua, but I'm talking about Wairua Māori. Yeah. So what's the rest of the question?
How do we bring this awareness to a collective front? How do we ensure that? I think you talked about consciousization of whānau, and that as kaimahi, that is part of our responsibility. So how does one take that consciousness building supporting role for whānau?
So I mean, the people, something saying, is he asking how do we do this? We have to start talking about it. We have to start saying, we have to say things like, what would it mean if you were to learn your pepeha? What would it mean if you were to welcome, if we were collectively to organise and mobilise to welcome Māori law back into our papakainga and our home? What would that look like on a huge scale? But the reality is we have to start with ourselves. We have to start to understand what has happened to us as a people. And part of that is about educating ourselves and nurturing each other along. So how do we, part of, how we, I was thinking about Wairua Māori, and how we do that is within our cultural practices and the things that we do. They're not an add-on from any other culture or somebody else to do on our behalf. They're how we do it with each other and for each other, and how we support each other. But we have to be doing it. We have to be practicing it, even if we get it wrong. I know about that.
Right. Tēnā no
Still
kōrua.
here. I'm not sure if that's even a good response. Like I say, I'm a slow filter, and I'll probably get the answer to that a bit more, in a wider sphere tonight. But if we, I think Billie-Jean was, if you're sitting with somebody that's been pretty obnoxious in front of you, and you know that you are trying to get a discussion about what is going on, what the behaviour is, and what they are actually doing, how do we ask a question that is going to get their attention? And one of the questions that I asked that really got somebody's attention was, who is going to take care of you when you die?
Aye.
Where do you want to go when you die? We've got no rights as Māori without responsibility, and we have to take responsibility for our behaviour. Oh, that got his attention. Yeah. So, it's things like that we have to work our way through, and we learn from those experiences as well. But I'm sure Billie-Jean's got some things to say.
I think the question was, how do we bring together collective wairua?
Awareness. So wairua is a force of nature. Wairua Māori is a force of nature. How do we bring that and other awarenesses to the front, a collective front?
Yeah, I mean, this research itself is a good way to do that. Supporting each other as kaupapa Māori is another good way to do that, I think. Yeah.
Tēnā kōrua. Sienna has a kōrero and a pātai. Tēnā kōrua ngā wahine toa. Ka tū koutou hei tauira mo tātou katoa. E whai ana I ngā hua, ora mo tō tāua whānau hapu iwi. I just want to mihi to you both for your strength and perseverance. I also want to take the time to mihi to Tania Mataki for her kindness she showed me over the time we spent together. He pātai tāku. Some whānau access support, however, they become overwhelmed by their own perceived sense of lacking in regard to Te Ao Māori. Sometimes this may result in them withdrawing from support services. I'll come to you, Billie-Jean. What type of strategies would you recommend to support whānau who present that way?
Yeah, it can be really overwhelming sometimes too, because especially if there's a lot of support being offered, funnily enough, but it's too much sometimes, and you just got to slow the process down. And I think for whānau who withdraw, you've got to tread lightly, ātahaere, go slowly, and just, I think, check in with whānau, and offer them support when they're ready. Yeah, but kia ora, Sienna, nice to hear from you.
You talked about about the wahine, and you said that any further oranga tamariki visits would happen in your whare with your tikanga. What if the wahine is not ready for that? Do you, does Te Puna Oranga sort of say, well, okay, well, we'll dispel with tikanga Māori and we'll help you? Or how do you negotiate that? I'm asking this
Yeah.
to practitioners who might be online who are like going, oh, am I crossing over and taking away their mana whakahaere in their life, or what am I doing?
Yeah, that decision wouldn't have been made without the whānau or without the wahine. That's something, if the whānau are not comfortable to do that, then we wouldn't do that, and then we'd go and support over at the Oranga Tamariki office. But 9 times out of 10, whānau want that. But it's something we can say, we can offer. And yeah, I mean, the difference between us and Oranga Tamariki office is, all their rules and regulations. And while we have that too, we're a whare. So it looks like somebody's lounge. It looks like we're sitting in somebody's lounge. And they feel at home there. And generally, whānau will want to stay at our whare because they feel more supported, and it's a more familiar environment for them. But never without them. We never make those decisions without them. Yeah.
Ai. Ngaropi, he whakautu tau mo tēnā?
No, I support Billie-Jean, but we're in two totally different regions, and the level of ministerial control with what they are doing and how they interact with the community is probably a little more rigid here. And my preference is that we should never allow any whānau we are working with to meet with any OT worker or any Ministry of Justice probations without a kaimahi being present. With a lawyer or a police officer, there should always be present wherever the hui is taking place. We're talking about resources and ongoing support. There's a lot of ongoing support that's required. Now, many whānau don't, they just think that, well, I've seen you this week, I don't want to bother you, that sort of thing. But it's the level of contact that's required sometimes is huge, and for various reasons, as Billie-Jean saying, is they're shy, they don't want to do some things, but we really just have to keep working at it. And if it's not. I think if most whānau were offered the opportunity to hold them on in a whare such as ours or on the marae, they would take it. With our support, they would take it, even if they feel uncomfortable. But what's more uncomfortable? Being held often to ransom in an OT office, in a situation which is governed by their rules and regulations. It's another example of state control and state power over. I think a whole different kōrero would start to happen. These things took place more often in the community. And I'm not talking about youth justice courts run on the marae. That's just a court run on the marae. There's tikanga around in that, but it is still a court structure that operates into a situation like ours or Billie-Jean's. What operates is tikanga. It's a process, it's a safe process, and it's there to keep everybody safe. That's what tikanga is. It's there to keep people safe. It's not there to disrupt or hinder. But it is a process, and it's been set down for centuries, and it's flexible. It's flexible. It's not set in concrete. It's flexible for the occasion. Yeah.
And I think that
does it make sense?
Oh, it really does. And probably for whānau who are experiencing disconnection from that, just what you've said about, there's flexibility there. It can meet our needs, and in that trust that you've built because they've come to you or you've connected to them, and sometimes having that leadership voice from you, korua, makes such a difference to whānau. He pātaia nō tēnei, how does understanding colonisation and state violence help practitioners to serve whānau better? Either of you start.
Well, I just think it gives kaimahi an understanding and empathy and awareness, you know, of the just of the things that Māori have had to endure, really, over time. What do you think, Ngaropi?
I think we have to get really clear as kaimahi that colonisation is state violence, which has been enacted. It hasn't gone away. It's still here. It's still in the world, you know, and if you want a classic example, just have a look at what has happened in the Gaza. You know, any of us will be re-stimulated by what is going on there. Colonisation is state violence. But the thing that gets me is about how all the historical accounts that talk about how amazingly curious, how welcoming our tupuna were. And, you know, they greeted warmly, they took innovation, they weren't scared of stuff. You know, they were brave, the men, women, the children. All those historical accounts talk about how brave and curious and intelligent our people, our tupuna were. And I can understand how they were acting out of their full humanness and with minds that were not constrained, that their minds were free and their minds were liberated. Yeah. What was the question again? It's about why we should understand it.
Yeah, how does understanding colonisation and state violence help practitioners to serve whānau better?
Well, you know, you've got to have an attitude about it for a start. You've got to know that what has happened to us and internalise that what has happened to us as a people is wrong. It's not okay. It's not okay to build your nation on other people's whenua, and deprive them of any economic base at all, to take the wealth of people with their land and plunge them into poverty, which is exactly what's happened, and then blame them for being poor, to incarcerate our men and then blame them for not being able to parent. This is what happened at Parihaka. They took the men away, and it's still going on. And you have, which makes you think about some things like in the last decade or so, 12%, from 12% of Māori women being incarcerated to 80%. You know, that's just incredible. That is incredible. And a little more than a decade, that the incarceration of Māori women has gone up that high. You know, from the pinnacle, from the peak of a power structure where wahine Māori were, and don't tell me we weren't at the peak. There's lots of reports that talk about the tapu of senior Māori woman was higher than the man's. The whare tangata, the whare tupuna is called te whare tangata. We are called te whare tangata. So from the pinnacle of tapu down to the worst statistics in this country, and it's our country, migrant women have got better statistics than we have. Shirley could tell you that. That is why we have to understand it. We have to have an attitude about that, about why we want to ensure this does not happen to our tamariki and mokopuna.
Yeah.
This is our country, and we are the true people to bring that wairua forward so that it can help the world, not hide down the bottom of the world. We've, you know, and I just think about how tupuna, that liberated mind where they just took knowledge you know, made it work for them. And we still tolerate a three yearly football match where we are kicked about, and you know, our mana and our knowledge and our traditions are treated like nothing, and a sacred document which gave, well, it didn't give them the right, which they took as their right to then come over and power over people, is treated like it's nothing. That document means something, and it has an order in it and a process in it, and it tells people where they belong and how they should behave. And we have to rebalance it because it's way out of balance. Yeah, it's part of it. It's just part of our life. It's part of our work. We have to do it. Somebody has to do it.
Right.
And all those things that Billie-Jean and I have to deal with go back to that.
Totally. You can't do this mahi without that awareness of colonisation and state violence, because if you're trying to work with someone who's traumatized and place them on their healing journey, you're just scratching the surface. So you need to have your own understanding of where some of that trauma has come from.
Tēnā kōrua. He pātai anō. How does your research help Ngāi Māori to collectivise across the motu? And is it possible to bring research kaupapa like he waka eke noa to the forefront of that collective, as opposed to having it fed back to people second or third hand via iwi leaders? Maybe it's this research project as an example of the collective amazing lived experiences that you all bring from different rohe, different whakapapa, and different areas of focus.
Yeah.
How do we grow the true warriors, as you named them us this afternoon, or yourselves this afternoon? How do we grow the number of true warriors to support the response against this violence?
One at a time, I suppose. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. I'll get thrown off by some question. They talk about construct across the nation, and I think, and then when you throw iwi leaders in there, and I think here we've got a 50-year strategy here, and they don't really want to know. It's. Nah, sorry, I've had a thought. It's escaped me.
That's a point.
Sorry.
Can you say the question again, please, Hinerang?
How does your research help Ngāi Māori to collectivise across the motu, across the country? And is it possible to bring research kaupapa like he waka eke noa to the forefront of that collective, as opposed to having it fed back to the people second or third hand via iwi chairs?
I think it is. I think this research will be widespread throughout the country. I mean, we all come from across the nation, from different iwi, and from different perspectives in terms of our local communities and the input that was fed in. So, you know, take the researchers. That's a nationwide voice for Māori. That's one way it can happen. And how do you get it to the forefront? You know, work with it. Tell your people about it. Yeah, definitely.
No, tēnā kōrua. From an anonymous...
No, I absolutely agree with Billie-Jean. You know, we've come together as a group with diverse experience in a lot of areas, but part of it is about disseminating the information as well. And, you know, and we have thought space wānanga as well, where in particular to move things towards policy so that can influence policy people. Yeah, no, and I just agree with Billie-Jean. It's a diverse, and there's things in the research which, because we have international advisors as well, you know, we've been overseas and people are interested that we talk about violation and that the person that has been hurt describes and names what that violation is, rather than us or anybody else or telling them what's happened to them. They get to name, you know, as a Māori person, how they feel they've been violated. There's a whole, and they starting, you know, what was said, oh, that's interesting. It's the first time we've heard people talk about violation. They started thinking about things in another way, and moving as to encompass it, that it encompasses more than just the act of being assaulted or sexually assaulted, that there is a whole group of people like whānau and whakapapa that is affected as well. So we're talking about things that our families talk about and people we interview talk and know about, and international people are saying, hey, this is another perspective. And I think that helped as well get international attention, a bit more internal attention too, as we disseminate reports and hold wānanga and conferences and that, and contribute to other projects. Yeah.
Tēnā korua. We have other pātai here, but for those that we have the names next to, we'll be able to perhaps follow up with them. But just there's an acknowledgement here. It's really important that our whānau know that they can have support with them in any space, formal or informal. It's about creating the good habits that become normal for our whānau to have those courageous conversations in uncomfortable situations. It's empowering. Love the kōrero wahine mā. But Leonie is with us as well this afternoon, and she would like to jump on with us as we finish not only this session but the series of 9 webinars before we finish for the afternoon with karakia. Tēnei te mihi ki a koe, Leonie. Taha ana ki te aki, te manaaki, i te rōpūranga hau nei. Ai, tēnā koe, he kōrero au mo te tokorua nei, mo tēnei e whakaputa ana i tēnei ahi.
Ai, tēnā koutou. Ai, he tino miharo. I really just wanted, on behalf of the team, to, we have this really great group of people that we've been working with over a number of projects, and really just to reiterate, we wanted to end the session of the series of webinars with BJ and Ngaropi as really the driving force behind the mahi, the research that we do. All of the research that we've been engaged in has come directly from Te Puna Oranga and Tūtama Wahine o Taranaki, directly from practitioners, and therefore it's really important as a team that actually those people at the coalface, those people at the cutting edge of the work did the summary of this mahi and brought us back to how we started. We started this work with Tanya Mātaki and Hene Wirangi, Kohu Morgan, who were the other 2 practitioners that worked alongside BJ and Ngaropi and the whānau, and it's really you 4 that have, and the teams that have generated this work, and as the researchers in the team, we really wanted to acknowledge that by ensuring that, the mahi, there was a question about how does this change, how does this bring about transformation in a collective way, and I agree with both with BJ and Ngaropi. It's about taking it to whānau, it's about taking it to hapu, it's about taking it to iwi, it's about taking it to community, it's about taking it in all spaces, and really He Waka Eke Noa is a piece of work that continues to affirm the work being done by kaupapa Māori providers in this space, and to bring forward some ways of thinking about it, and to support the kaimahi. So I just wanted to come and acknowledge Te Tamawahi no Taranaki, acknowledge Te Puna Oranga, acknowledge all of the whānau in both organisations and beyond, and to again recognise and honour the work of Tania and Tēniwirangi in this mahi. So nō reira, kia kōrua, koutou hoki o ātia, nā koutou tēnei whakarite, tēnei whakahaere, tēnei mahi whakahira mo tātou, tēnei te mihi aki kia koutou. Kia koutou e whakarongo mai ana, tēnā koutou. So from all of our team, our rangahau team, you know, we've been given more mahi by the kaimahi in these organisations, and so we'll be keeping moving forward, but we're really committed to ensuring that this mahi goes as far and wide as we possibly can. So, kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe, Leonie. Can I just ask either Billie-Jean or Ngaropi to, there was one pātai, and that was the research. How does this research for you as practitioners give you, or how do you use the research to help you work with whānau, you know, with more kaha or more effectiveness, or, yeah?
For us, it's really important tool. It's not just like the piece that Ngaropi and I have talked about today, but it's all of the research that informs our practice. So that's how we use the research. It's also really great for new kaimahi coming through, you know, for development of the kaimahi. But yeah, it helps us all, even though we do the work daily, it still informs our practice daily. So that's how we would use it.
So research alongside our practice actually validates our practice. It validates what we have been doing and what we have known for a long time. And you know, I think that like the survey just puts a line right through any type of kōrero when they say to us now, oh, that's just anecdotal. Oh no, we've got evidence. So evidence is what we do. But there are some things around evidence-based practice that I absolutely do not agree with, and I don't. But that's not what I'm talking about here in relation to Indigenous practice. It validates what we do, it informs what we do, and it gives a background of knowledge for kaimahi to be able to talk with whānau, and it gives that knowledge to whānau and to community. There's new things that we bring together. And you know, there's some things that from the research we've looked at, we've said, look, this was done over 40 years ago and it's still relevant. And, you know, an example with Te Aurere Kura, and their conference has just been postponed, but they were going to, part of what they were going to disseminate again was the document that sits behind Pō Te Atatu, the Litany of Silence. All that evidence and the voices of our people and the things that they were saying that are still relevant today. So that's, you know, so it brings stuff forward, does the here and now, and it brings things from that have passed back to the front again, that they are relevant, they are part of who we are, and they can help us move forward. They can help us get back in control. This is our country.
O tēnā no koutou, o tino tēnā, tēnā koutou ngā kai rangahau katoa o tēnei rangahau he waka eke noa. We can't wait for the research to be released and shared. And korua, I hear that those who have participated in these sessions will actually get a copy of the research sent to them via their email. Kei te tika tērā?
Aye.
Rawe. Tino tino rawera atu I te whānau. But where will we find it once it's been released? Where will it be on the Tū Tama Wahine website?
Tama Wahine website. Aye. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll put that link, perhaps, Sophie, if you could put that link into the chat again so that whānau can take note of that. Kia, he nui ngā kaupapa, he nui ngā mahi I o tia koutou I ngā tau e hia ki nei. E mihi ana ki a koutou. Kia koutou ngā kaiwhakarongo ki tēnei o ngā rangahau, I hoki mai e te I o koutou ki ia wahanga. Nā reira, tēnei te mihi kia koutou me o koutou pātai, me o koutou mihi ki ēnei kai kōrero. E mihi ana hoki ki ngā tamariki mokopuna, e poipoi ana I roto I ngā tau. Kia kimi huarahi, kia whakakaha I roto I a koutou, mō te taki, hea te taki, te whānau, ko te whānau te taki. So I hope that those of us who may not be kairangahau or may not be practitioners, by being part of this, the sharing of this rangahau, we may be inspired to find whatever path that we can to give our best value, because we deserve, our mokopuna deserve the very best in the reframing and the rebalancing from this experience of our tupuna trauma into a place of enlightenment and a place of healing. So kia whakakapi tō tātou kaupapa nei I roto I te karakia, kia hiki I te wairua, kia au tonu ki te kaupapa, kia kore e ngaro, kia kore e mimiti, tēnei kaha I roto I a tātou. Pera hoki rā te uuka o te rangi, te tukutuku o te rangi, te heihei o te rangi, te mamangi o te rangi, e rongo purutia ki au, purutia ki a mau, kia tuturu o te wakamaua kia tīna, tīna, haumi e, hui e, tāi ki e, tēnā rā tātou.